Ukrainian forces have deployed Harpoon anti-ship missiles to the Black Sea as a counter to Russian surface ships in the region, Minister of Defense Alexei Reznikov said. Denmark provided the US-built anti-ship missiles to Kyiv, the Pentagon announced last month. The new Harpoon coastal defense battery joined the Ukrainian Navy's domestically produced Neptune anti-ship missiles. Our coastal defense was strengthened by highly effective Harpoon complexes, Reznikov said in a translation of a Thursday address. Together with our Neptunes, the Harpoons are already forcing the enemy fleet to keep the distance to avoid the fate of the Russian Black Sea Fleet flagship Moskva. Two land-based Neptune missiles, based on a modified Soviet-era copy of a Harpoon, were used to sink the Slava-class cruiser RTS Moskva 121 on April 13. The Danish military has used land-based RGM-84L4 Harpoon Block IIs that are capable of not only hitting ships at sea, but also targets in port and on land with an upgrade from the Boeing Advanced Harpoon Weapon Control System, reported USNI News last month. This expands Harpoon's capability to attack coastal, in-harbor, and land targets such as shore defense sites, surface-to-air missile sites, exposed aircraft, port/industrial facilities and ships in port, reads a 1999 press release from Boeing on the sale of the system to the Danish Naval Material Command. Ukrainian forces have sought to break the Russian Navy blockade of Odessa to allow grain shipments out of the country. The situation is very complicated, Sergei Brachik, a spokesman for the Odessa military district, told World.com on Thursday. The ports are not working at all, they are blocked completely. Ukraine cannot export the grain that it has agreed to export before the beginning of the big war. In addition to Russian surface ships, approaches out of Odessa have been heavily mined, with the Ukrainian MOD accusing Russian forces of setting drifting sea mines. In his address, Reznikov called for more modern NATO systems to replace Soviet ground systems to include long-range, heavy weapons. I cannot say that I am satisfied with the tempo and quantity of weapon supplies. Absolutely not. But at the same time, I am extremely grateful to the countries that support us. In particular, to the United States of America, the United Kingdom, Poland, and our Baltic friends. And to all other states that help repel Russian evil, he said. We have already received, bought on the market, manufactured and handed over to the armed forces of Ukraine a significant number of weapons. These numbers would have been enough for a victorious defense operation against any army in Europe. But not against Russia. Sam Legrone is the editor of USNI News. He has covered legislation, acquisition and operations for the sea services since 2009 and spent time underway with the U.S. Navy, U.S. Marine Corps and the Canadian Navy. The Harpoon anti-ship missile is probably the most common weapon of its type in the West. Since it entered production with McDonnell Douglas, now part of Boeing, in 1975, over 7,000 have been produced, equipping hundreds of ships around the world at the relatively cheap price of around $1.5 million. This weapon system is versatile, capable of also being launched from aircraft, trucks, and submarines. A little-known fact about this missile is that it was originally developed as a weapon against submarines. With its sea-skimming capability, it was originally intended to destroy diesel boats recharging their batteries on the surface. The very project name was the reference to that mission, as submarines are commonly nicknamed whales in the Navy, and harpoon is used as a verb to describe the act of sinking one. Why the U.S. Navy thought it was a valid concept has been lost to history, as almost all Soviet diesel submarines then in service and all in development used snorkels to charge their batteries during wartime, allowing them to remain submerged. In any case, it was repurposed into a weapon for use against surface ships soon after the sinking of Israeli destroyer Eilat by a Soviet P-15 Termit anti-ship cruise missile in 1967. That event convinced the U.S. Navy that they needed a dedicated anti-ship missile, and to save time and money, they simply repurposed the Harpoon for that role. The name was retained. The Harpoon is a subsonic high-explosive over-the-horizon sea-skimming anti-ship missile. It tracks its quarry using active radar and detonates on contact. This missile is fitted with a heavy 221 kg penetration blast warhead. Propulsion comes from a Teledyne CAJ402-400 turbojet delivering 300 kg of thrust, allowing the Harpoon to cruise at about Mach 0.5, 617 km per hour. The Harpoon has gone through several developmental stages known as blocks.
The initial model is known as Block 1.
When it nears its target, Block 1 harpoons increase altitude before suddenly diving on their target. Block 1B removed this feature, while Block 1C made it optional. Block 1D, a model of limited production, had an increased range and re-attackability, i.e.,
the ability to attack again if it missed the first time. Block 1G is an improved version of the SLAM-ER under development with re-attack and image comparison ability.
Block 1J is a proposed upgrade to make the Harpoon able to fire at land and sea targets, eliminating the need for both the SLAM and standard Harpoon.
The Block 2 is the newest operational model in the Harpoon line. New features include improved resistance to countermeasures and better targeting.
Expected to enter service in 2017, the Harpoon Next Generation has an improved range, due to a more fuel-efficient engine and lighter warhead.
It is a contender for the surface-to-surface armament of the U.S. Navy's new littoral combat ships like the Freedom class.
On ships, the Harpoon is normally launched from octuple launchers.
The Harpoon first saw combat in 1980 in the Iran-Iraq War. Since then, it has also been used in U.S.-Libya conflicts of 1986, 1988 U.S. operations in the Persian Gulf, and several accidental shootings.
Currently, about 30 nations use the Harpoon, including Australia, South Korea, Canada, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Egypt, the United States, Taiwan, Germany, Turkey, Israel, India, Japan, and the United Kingdom.
Variants: AGM-84, version for launch from fixed-wing aircraft. RGM-84, surface-launched variant.
It is fitted with a detachable solid-fuel rocket booster for initial flight.
The RGM-84 is longer and heavier than the AGM-84. UGM-84, model for submarine usage.
It is also referred as Sub-Harpoon.
This missile, too, has a rocket booster and is longer and heavier than the AGM-84. Until it reaches the surface, the UGM-84 is sealed in a container.
AGM-84E SLAM, Standoff Land Attack Missile. This is an all-weather air-launched infrared-guided land attack cruise missile developed from the AGM-84 Harpoon in 1990 with a range of at least 110 kilometers. It is basically a longer, heavier AGM-84 missile modified with a Tomahawk missile warhead. This weapon could be launched from aircraft such as the F/A-18 Hornet, a 6 Intruder, P-3 Orion, and S-3 Viking.
It has since been replaced by the SLAM-ER.
AGM-84H/K SLAM-ER, Standoff Land Attack Missile, expanded response, an improved version of the AGM-84E